What's causing inflation? Wherever you look these days, there are headlines about inflation, and most Americans are worried. You might think it's difficult to understand inflation, and that's understandable. Even those that have been studying the economy and markets for many years don't completely understand how inflation works. Its effects on society, from who wins to who loses, to whether it's good news or bad news, are complex. So what is inflation? Inflation refers to a decrease in purchasing power over time. Basically, it means that your money won't let you buy as much later as it does today. The annual price change for goods and services is called inflation. One main measurement of inflation in the United States is the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI. It measures the price of consumers' out-of-pocket purchases. Now, inflation is not always bad. Some consumer price inflation can be considered desirable. This is because it allows companies to adapt to changing economies where labor and commodities may cost more. But inflation that is too high, like we're having, can cause problems. So what causes high inflation? High inflation in the short term can be caused by a hot economy. This is one where people have access to a lot of credit and are willing to spend. Businesses may have to increase prices if consumers are purchasing a lot of goods and services. They do this because they know that they can increase profits and keep customers. Inflation can also rise or fall depending on economic developments. Problems in the supply chain can cause goods to be out of stock, which can lead to higher prices. The coronavirus, which has also caused factories to close down and clog shipping routes, has also contributed to a decrease in the supply of things like cars and food and have pushed prices higher. It's also true that consumers who have saved a lot of money through months of lockdown and repeated government stimulus checks are spending strongly, which is contributing to some inflation. Meanwhile, officials claim they don't yet see evidence that rapid inflation has become a permanent feature in the economy's economic landscape. This is despite prices rising very rapidly. Now, there are many reasons to believe that this price surge will recede. The increase in prices this year is largely due to a shortage of goods, including food, cars, and electronics. These will likely decrease as companies find ways to produce and transport the goods that people want to purchase. However, there are worrying signs that inflation might become more persistent, which could mean that it will continue to rise rather than slow down. As home prices have increased, rents have gone up, and potential buyers have been locked out of purchasing homes. Long-term, high inflation can become entrenched when workers start to expect it and are able to negotiate wage increases to offset rising costs. If companies are facing rising labor costs, they may be able to pass these costs on to consumers, and you end up in a situation in which prices and pay go up. All this inflation is especially difficult for people who are poor. Poor people can have a hard time coping with high or unpredictable inflation that's not outmatched by wage increases. This is simply because they have less flexibility. The poor spend more on their necessities such as food, housing, and gas. This can be a big problem because they might be forced to reduce essentials like food. Inflation can also be a problem for many businesses. Businesses without pricing power, which means they can't pass costs on to consumers easily, suffer the most because they have to absorb price increases in their costs by taking a hit with their profits. So is there anything that can stop all this? To help fight inflation, the central bank, the Federal Reserve, typically will raise interest rates. The Federal Reserve can raise rates to try to cool down the economy and slow down demand. The problem is that the central bank could raise rates too much, which could lead to a recession, which would make things difficult for everyone. The hope is that the Fed can raise interest rates to slow the economy, while at the same time not slowing it too much to cause a recession, while the rate of inflation returns to a more normal level.